You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
We're talking about life on life's terms. We're talking about emotional agility in sobriety. I'm on with Recovered Life contributor, Shauna McKenna Vick. How you doing, Shauna?
I'm great. Thanks, Damon. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Welcome back. We've had a quick break on the Recovered Life Show, our little annual summer break that we have. It's so good to have you back on the show. So good to talk about this topic, life on life's terms. Wow, that's a big one. That's a big one in sobriety, right?
It is a big one because everybody says your life gets so much better when you're sober, and it does. And you've heard me on many podcasts, Damon, say, I have a great life, right? But that's because we run out of time, and I can't tell you all the challenges that come along and how I deal with them. But I don't focus on them. I don't catastrophize and say, oh, this and this happened and this happened and this happened, because I take life on life's terms and I show up and respond to the different situations in my life. But, life is pretty great sober.
Let's talk about what is life on life's terms, because I think there's sometimes a confusion about that. A lot of people think, well, I just have to accept everything that's going on in my life and I can't make any changes. It's just, this is just the way that it is. That's not totally it. Let's really kind of dive down. What does life on life's terms actually mean?
Well, to me, Damon, it means taking the good with the bad, accepting the things that are coming along. But we don't just sit and allow life to happen to us. We go out, we do things, we take action, we leave the results. For me, I leave the results in God's hands, my higher power's hands, because I can't control results. But I can show up when things happen and respond appropriately. So life on life's terms, we're going to have hiccups that happen to us during the day. There are days, little things like this, where I drop stuff and I'm like, oh my goodness, I just keep dropping stuff over and over and then spilling and dropping and spilling and dropping. And usually it's an indicator of not that my life is falling apart, but maybe I'm doing too much too quickly. I have to stop and assess and go, hey, what's going on here? Did I not take enough time and quiet time this morning? That my brain is moving too fast, faster than my hands are. That's something real small. And then you have the bigger things that happen. And, we'll touch on a couple of the big things that have happened to me in sobriety that I have accepted that they've happened, but I haven't wallowed in them. And I've addressed them and done what I have to do and then learned from them as well, or tried to seek out what maybe I was supposed to be taught through them.
I think one of the things with life on life's terms that I remember, one of the first things was acceptance. You talked about that a lot. This whole idea of acceptance, of not necessarily agreeing with everything that's happening to you, or not really even necessarily, because I was a big action person. Like, I wanted things to change, right? And I think that's fine. Like, if you're in a situation that's, not so good, maybe financially, maybe your living situation's not so good, maybe you're drinking all the time, right? You want that to change. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the inability to look at where you're at and be honest with yourself, right? I think that is the whole thing. And fighting against the reality of life, I think that's so common for people in recovery, especially early recovery, is just not having this acceptance of where they're at here and now.
Oh, that is something to think about. Just, that gives me a bit of pause, because when I think back to real early recovery and, how do you get to that acceptance place? Acceptance is a tough one, Damon. It can't be in a vacuum. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm sober now and I accept the way my life is. There has to be some spiritual dimension to it. If you look at the dimensions of wellness, when we're in recovery, whatever program that you've chosen, for me, it's the 12 steps. But you address in overall recovery, you're addressing your physical, your emotional, your spiritual, your intellectual, you're healing on all these different dimensions in your life. And so things are going to get better. They have to get better. You're not putting toxins into your body and tearing yourself down. You're building yourself up. You're nourishing yourself. You're trying to improve how you think about things, how you go about things. Now, on a spiritual basis, for me, it's that, my higher power, God has a plan for my life. And I accept that. When things happen, I don't say, well, God made this happen or God allowed this to happen. I just say, yeah, things happen because that is life. That is accepting life on life's terms. So back to, thinking about how to accept life on life's terms. I just don't think you can do it in a vacuum. I think you have to have some sort of spiritual dimension for that.
Yeah. I agree. I think, why is this so tough? It's interesting. When I think back, it's like, I think about it now, all the things that I was very hard to accept for me, and one of them, I have to tell you, was being an alcoholic, accepting, I knew I was an alcoholic, thank God, right? Like, I'd accepted the fact that, yes, I'm an alcoholic, but the fact that God dealt me that hand, I felt I had a lot of resentment against that at the very beginning. Like, why me? You know what I'm talking about? The whole why me thing. And I think this is a very common, but I do find that, like, I always heard these sayings, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I find it much easier for people that aren't in recovery than people that are early in recovery. Like, I hate to use the word normies, but people who don't have addiction problems they seem to be able to take things a lot of times easier that come up to handle them than people in early recovery. Very, very tough sometimes. And I know I railed against facts, certain facts. This is where I'm at in my life right now. This is what's going, like, it was just unacceptable to me until life kind of beat me down enough that I had to learn how to accept them or drink again.
Yeah, man, you brought up a lot of talking points there. We could go so many different directions with that. First, to address what you said, that why me, right? Why me? As an interventionist, I work with people who are in the thick of it. It reminds me of being back at that place. I knew I was an alcoholic from very early age. I knew it came to me through genetics, definitely, and just that it was my path. So I didn't personally have a hard time accepting that I was. I had a hard time accepting that I was going to have to make a decision to not drink again and seek the solution. But I see that with a lot of people. And if you stick in the why me, if you get stuck in the why me and the self-pity, and that's not something you've addressed, then when things do happen in early recovery, or later on in recovery, and you're ending up on why is this happening to me? Why is this and this and this and this? And you're mired down in self-pity. That is just, that could easily make you drink again, because that's what, at least in the 12 steps, that we want to be free from self-pity, selfishness, self-centeredness. And when we focus so much on this why me, not maybe what can I learn from this situation? Or what action should I take right now that I can control?
Yes, I love that. I love that. I find that a lot of times in recovery, and I'm sure, like, as an interventionist, you deal with this a lot, where people are in crisis and this overwhelming feeling that they can't be in their skin, that something has to drastically change, right? So this ability, I also believe in life and life's terms, is to be able to stay where you're at, even if you're uncomfortable. So many people, it's they run, right? Or they fight. Sometimes just to be able, like, what I learned is to be able to stay neutral is so important, at least so that I can decipher what's going on. Because a lot of the times I find that one of the byproducts of alcoholism, and whether we have this before we start drinking, right, or not, is this thinking problem of being able to interpret actually what's going on and how we fit into it. And that takes time. in recovery. I know you deal with this a lot in recovery. We were just talking about some stuff that's going on with your life. And it's like a bunch of stuff happened at one time, and your ability to be able to kind of stay neutral and to kind of see what's going to happen and to let it kind of work itself out. Not that you don't have feelings about what's going on in the moment, right? We're human, sure. Right? But there's not these massive reactions that we had when we were out there drinking or first got sober.
Right. And this builds on what we spoke about the last time, the spiritual dimension of recovery. How do you stay neutral? Well, it's nearly impossible to stay neutral if you're not taking the time to pray or meditate or do yoga or get in touch with your higher power or God or build your relationship with God. Building in that pause in the morning to, ground yourself and start your day on a spiritual plane, then that's how, at least that's how I can stay neutral. My ability to be serene and not to have the extreme ups and downs and to be able to kind of move through life like this is directly proportional to the amount of time I invest in my spiritual life, whether it be, an hour and a half in prayer and meditation in the morning, or like today, getting up at 2:30, thank you to my dogs, and not going to bed. I don't complain about it anymore. I just say, wow, I get 2 hours or 2.5 hours to meditate now. And I listen to guided meditations, and that, carries me through the day. Because there's not too much else you can do between 2:30 and 5. And I see it as an opportunity to get myself grounded and balanced so that when these challenging situations come along, I can respond and not react.
Yeah. And I think this is a learning thing. I think when we're talking about, you use that word agility, right? Before agility. And I think this is really the magic of emotional sobriety. When we're talking about it is the ability to have this agility to look at things, right, Shauna? Like, because in a different way, a friend of the show who's been on several times, my buddy George Schneider, always told me, I remember I was having a really rough time, and I'm somebody who needs to find a solution to things, always. Like, I'm just kind of geared that way. I want to find a solution. I want to fix it, right? Like, and I could not fix this issue. I was so frustrated. And he said, Damon, sometimes a problem without a solution is called a fact. And that's an acceptance issue, right? Like, and that was that, I know that sounds crazy, but that like blew my mind. I was like, you know what? You're right. This is a fact. This isn't a change issue. This is an exception issue, right? Like, I've got to accept this. Like, we find this a lot in recovery. It's like you realize in recovery that some people are difficult. Some people you're never really going to have peace with, right? So, right. Whether that's an employer or a friend or whatever. So some things are just difficult.
So I like that about the fact that, we can't we can't find a solution right there in the moment or maybe ever. And we have to learn to be able to sit with that and sit in the uncomfortable and to be able to embrace that pause. Our minds go a million miles a minute. I know yours does and mine does. We tend to speak as quickly as well. And we've shared that before with ADHD, and you just go. But to be able to be comfortable in the pause and to be able to sit in the uncomfortable. And I liked what you said about, we don't have to feel great about it. We can have bad feelings about something that happened. And I'll just give you a quick example. Last summer or last spring, not this past spring, a year ago, I was out doing some work on our property, pulling some weeds and doing things, and a tree fell and hit me over the head. And I had just launched my business. I was so busy. I was doing a ton of things. I had so much to do. I was go. I just had wrist surgery a week before, and there I was out doing all this work, and then a tree hits me on the head. The ambulance comes. I pass out. I get 17 staples in my head, and I was angry. I was so angry. And I just kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to do any harm to anybody else. I was just angry about the situation because I don't like to actually sit in the pause. I don't like to sit. And I was so angry, Damon. I didn't even speak for a week. Like I texted my sponsor. I said, I know I'm not supposed to be angry. And she's like, you can be angry. You can be angry. Just don't stay there forever. But we have these emotions about it. And what I did is I saw it as a spiritual time. What was I supposed to learn from this? And what I did learn, and what I heard God say to me, not like out loud, but just through meditation and journaling and things, was I was doing too much. I needed to slow down. I was really trying to run the show. So I'm not saying God, well, okay. Metaphorically, I feel like God hit me over the head with a tree to say, slow down and listen. And but that's not why things happen. Things just happen. I looked for the meaning in it, but it took me a while to get there. And once I got there, and that's acceptance, right? That's acceptance. Damon is saying, okay, well, I don't know why this happened. It just happened, but what can I learn from it? What can I take from it? And maybe, where does it fit into my life right now? And it was miraculous, not miraculous healing. I still had, challenges with my brain for a very long time after that. I had the concussion, and but I was able to reroute on some personal issues that were going on in my life. And I could reroute at that time and really take the time to look at them, assess them, address them, and take the action that I could have. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been forced to stay in a dark room for 2 weeks. I can promise you that, because I never sit still. And you can see I'm sitting here talking. I'm sit up, lean back, sit up, lean back. I don't sit still.
Okay. I think this is this. I think you've really tapped on it, because Shauna, I think you've really kind of gotten to the secret here of a lot of emotional sobriety. Is this be the interpreter changing within us, right? Like, so one of the big shifts that I had to do in my life, and very early on, because I don't think I would have stayed sober if I didn't pursue this shift. And I'm always in this shift, by the way. I've never perfected this. It's always something I'm always working on, was the ability to be able to take life as it comes and to rewrite the script of what that meant to me. So for example, I didn't get the job. I didn't get what I thought I needed or wanted. Right. And many times it was wanted. I always ended up getting what I needed. Typically, that's been my experience, but I didn't get what I thought I should have gotten, needed, right? Or wanted. And what ends up happening is the blessing actually, and the maturity and the growth and the actual even physical things and emotional things came out of that so-called perceived setback. So the ability to rewire the way that I was thinking about my life, to start looking at everything that came to me in life and life's terms as the ability to be able to do something that I would not have been able to do, a gift that we were talking about cars and car accidents and the economy, how it's tough now. It's tougher than it was, right? For a lot of people, 3 to 4 years ago, that this is an opportunity for me to be able to do something that I never would have been able to do. And I'm going to tell you, the first big one, Shauna, for me was being an alcoholic. I see that as a massive gift, not alcoholism necessarily,
right?
But the process of me being able to go through that and recover, and then really be able to touch a lot of different people along the way and help them get it right. Like, that never would have happened if I wasn't an alcoholic.
Oh, I completely agree. People say that it's crazy when they hear others say, I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic. And I'm like, oh, it's not crazy to me at all. I am totally grateful that I had this, because it has given me the tools to live life on life's terms, to have this life that's it's a totally different experience. It's given me better relationships. It's given me better perspective. It's given me a higher sense of, loving others and being selfless and what it really means to be selfless versus self-centered and selfish and always driving for my own, seeking first to understand, putting others before myself. And I thought I did all those things before, but being in recovery has opened my eyes and has helped me to learn to show up differently, show up with grace, dignity. You know what? Show up as my authentic self. I'm not hiding things. I am being just me, and you can take it or leave it. I mean, some people can't take me, and that is okay, but I'm not going to change who I am. Right. So yeah. I accept where I am in life. I accept, and I'm grateful for the gift of alcoholism in my life, because I wouldn't have the life that I have today. And I feel that for me, it is such a richer life having gone through those challenges.
Well, one of the things that when we were thinking about doing this episode, we were talking about it. One of the things I always think back when we do these episodes, I think back on my life and say, okay, like, well, where did this pop up in my life? And the ability to start looking at things as opportunities was huge, right? The understand to be able to differentiate these facts that we're talking about. Yeah, this is a fact. I'm not going to play for the NBA. I'm not, 8 feet tall. Right. Like I'm 6'2", but that's not tall. Like, like there were certain facts that I had to do with my life. Not that I wanted to play for the NBA, but like there were certain facts that I had to just accept. Yes, I'm in this place because of alcohol and, my addiction to it. And it's not the best place right now. Yes. And I need to get out, I need to do this. If people are listening to this, Shauna, how do they start this? Because I think the hardest part on life's terms is the first olive out of the jar, right? Like this ability to deny about where you're at and what you need to do. And how do you start this? Because it seems so overwhelming for people who are kind of starting this journey. What do you advise people that you're coaching to do if they're struggling with this issue?
So, dig deep. Everyone has gone through things and survived. Okay. We've all survived the pandemic. Okay. We've all survived all the challenges of the past few years. So we have inner strength. So when I'm coaching someone, I'll get them to dig back in their life to see that they can do it. And one of the things that, back to where we were saying, why me, why me? Changing it to why not me? Why not me? I have the tools. I have a roof over my head. I have a husband, a daughter. I have a family. I have food on the table. Why not me? I can figure out. I am sober and I can figure out how to get through this. That's oversimplifying. But
I love
why
that.
not me? I have God's grace that has helped me recover from alcoholism. So why not me? I have this grace that I can tap into figure this out.
Yeah, I love this. And I think, that's again, changing this interpreter status of what you're actually saying to yourself, right? Like I love that because, I think so many times we don't understand people in recovery, Shauna, in my opinion, are the toughest people out there, especially people who've been able to stay sober, right? Like, because we've had to go through a lot and still stay sober.
Yeah. And, we have a lot of strength and we have gone through a lot. And, one of my favorite things about doing these segments with you, Damon, is that we have so much to talk about. We always say, oh, we're only going to go 15, 17 minutes. And then before you know it, we're again, solving the problems of the world. It's just so great to be able to talk about this on a spiritual level, on a recovery level. And, you did make the point that people who aren't alcoholics may not have the challenges that we have when things happen. But then there are a ton of people who say, why me? Who say, well, this happened and this happened.
Absolutely.
I feel like this is chaos and they have no direction and they catastrophize, like my life is falling apart. No, your life is not falling apart. 3 things just happen in a row, but you don't have to catastrophize. So that's, when I'm working with people who don't have a recovery program and who may not have an addiction, we, just through the life coaching side, it's really to take a look at, are there other issues, like deeper issues? I'm not a therapist. I will recommend therapy is a really good place to start for a lot of people. You asked where do people start? Well, therapy, finding a good therapist to talk to someone, to talk about some of the things that go on is a very good thing. We all need to, we go see the doctor when we're sick. Just because we're, emotionally not well doesn't mean we can't go and see a doctor to treat our emotional stability. If we're having challenges in our marriage, why not go see someone who deals with marriages? Just like we would say, you know what, I'm not feeling well and I'm going to go to the doctor. So, taking that kind of action really makes a difference. Seeing where we can take action is really important. And knowing,
absolutely,
the wisdom to know if we can take action or not.
Yeah, I love that. And, you're talking about therapy, you're talking about coaching. And I think this is one of the blessings of having a really good support system. And we've done a lot of episodes on the Recovered Life Show about how to do that. So you could dig back through them to find out how to actually pick people in your life that are going to be, that are going to help you. And that might not be the people that you think at the very beginning, right? Like I always tell people that are in 12-step groups, don't pick the coolest guy, the coolest, right? Like, don't pick, right? Find somebody who's been around and has dealt with a lot of stuff and has some sort of emotional sobriety, right? Isn't key and triggered, and those aren't necessarily on the outside the most coolest people. You have to dig in a little bit, right? And usually those are the people who hold a lot of value in your support group. One of the things that I think is interesting, and to kind of wrap this episode, I know we've covered a lot of stuff here, but I think it's so important because one of the things is I think that in recovery, we kind of grow up a lot.
Yes.
Right? We do. We
grow up a lot.
We do. We grow up a lot. And one of those things about life and life's terms is this victim thing. And I see this a lot in recovery, this old, I'm a, poor alcoholic, and by the grace of God, I'm like, this whole thing. And yes, by the grace of God, we're sober. I agree with that, but we're not victims, right? Like, and, we might have been victimized, but we have to move out of that consciousness. And a lot of people who can't, that I see, especially in 12-step groups, this houses them a lot, is that they get into this victim mode, that everything is happening to them. And I think one of the big things, and I was there at one point, I got kind of stuck in that, right? I call it church basement thinking. Like, I was just kind of stuck. It's like, and one of a great coach and mentor that I had told me and said, you got to stop thinking that it's all about you. Things happen in life. It's not all about you. Like car crashes happen and people get sick, but it's not about you. You didn't really have anything to do with it. And a lot of that is codependency, is maybe being raised in that, and the ability to be able to let go. And I know there's a lot of people who say, yeah, Damon, you don't understand. Like, I've really been victimized. And I acknowledge you, and I'm sure you would as a coach too, to say, acknowledge, yes, you might have been victimized, but to stay in that victim consciousness your whole life, your whole sobriety, it's just going to get you drunk, in my opinion. Like, it's going to, and if you don't get drunk, it's going to make you miserable.
Yeah. Painful and miserable. And, one of the quickest ways out when I'm sponsoring women more than on the coaching side, because I can, call them out on their self-pity a little better and say, you're in self-pity. Why don't you do something for someone else? Why don't you call someone? Here's another thing. How do you get out of that why me or why? Call someone else. See how they're doing. Don't talk about yourself and what's going on with you, but really listen and be there for them and show interest in them, and you'll automatically feel better. Or write a letter to someone, just anyone at an senior center, and just say, who doesn't get mail? Call them up. Who doesn't get mail? I'd like to write a letter to someone. Just get out of yourself. Do something for someone else. And that is an instant way to get out of that self-pity. Because then we're focused on others and how we can be of service and bring love and light to others.
Love that.
Even
Shauna.
when things are going crappy at home, we have to take action and find a way out.
Shauna, final words here. Anybody who's sitting listening to this, having maybe a little bit of trouble, life on life terms, final words about that.
It's not going to be like this forever. As you develop more resilience and ability to accept life and practice acceptance and, see that you're part of a bigger picture, you're going to feel better. It's going to be okay. You're going to get, the longer in sobriety, you're going to see that your brain is healing, right? So that's part of it too. The longer we're off alcohol, the more our brain heals. Even when you have a concussion, your brain continues to heal after that. So your brain is healing, your emotions are healing. I mean, this is happening 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Be patient with yourself. Be patient if you're not able to say, you know what, I can practice that right away. Be patient. It's going to come. It's going to come.
Love it. Shauna McKenna, Vick, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We're going to put links on how you can contact her in the show notes. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Damon. Always great to see you. I'll see you next time.
Sometimes addiction recovery can be a lonely battle, but you don't have to fight it alone. At Recovered Life, we're dedicated to helping you live your best recovered life. And that's why we're inviting you to subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. Every week, we carefully curate exclusive content from leading minds in addiction recovery, mental health, and all things important to the recovery lifestyle. Stay in the know with the latest news about addiction and get exclusive invitations to special recovery-focused events and explore insights tailored to support recovery from alcoholism, drug addiction, codependency, disordered eating, dysfunctional family dynamics, gambling, and so much more. With our newsletter, each week becomes an opportunity for growth, healing, and taking a step closer to the life you deserve. Take your first step towards a brighter future today. Go to recoveredlife.us and subscribe for free. Sign up now at recoveredlife.us.